Hey, this is Bad Vibes. Today's video is on those night shift stories. On a night shift, you're usually alone, it's dark, and the freaks come out at night. One of the 4 stories is not technically a night shift story, as it happens right after the night shift, but that's close enough. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. This happened to me about a year ago. I've only ever shared the story with a couple of people. However, I thought it couldn't hurt to share it here. Big disclaimer before going forward. Don't worry, I realize I'm a huge idiot in this situation, and my choices could have put me in danger. However, I made it out alive and unharmed, and that's all that really matters, even if I was too panicked to think properly and acted like a complete idiot. Also, before I forget to mention, I'm a 21-year-old female. So it was around June 2019. I was doing a closing shift at the McDonald's I worked at in town. I live in England, originally from Scotland. We close up at 2 a.m. on weekdays and 3 a.m. on weekends. It had been a Saturday night shift, so I was finished and out the building by 3:15 roughly. When this happened, I was living about 10 to 15 minutes walk from my work in a flat that was mostly taken up by students. I didn't have money to spare to consistently get taxis, and I had been walking home at night for the past year with no incidents, so of course, I didn't think anything differently of doing it again. The majority of my walk was fine, and I was about 4 minutes away from my flat when I noticed a guy just standing near the corner that I had to turn to get home. I am wary when I see people, but usually they're drunk, or mind their own, or just ask for directions. Or it's a homeless person, as there's quite a lot in the city I live in. But at this time at night, they usually keep to themselves. This guy was dressed nice, but casual, looked around mid-20s, well-groomed, tan skin, and a really strong smelling aftershave. He was obviously a regular at a gym too, because he had a muscular figure, and he didn't seem to be drunk by the look of things, but who knows. I tried to keep my distance, but he approached me and started making really casual conversation, asking me what my name was, complimenting my accent, and asking where I was from. I stupidly engaged with him, but gave him a fake name and made it clear I wasn't up for a chat. I should have been firm with my words, but I'm way too introverted and shy to speak up. Even my boyfriend complains that I talk too quietly sometimes, and I struggle to be direct with people. Throughout the whole conversation, he was giving me an unsettling smile and would try to touch my arm or play with my hair, which I made it as clear as I possibly could that I did not approve of, not that he was listening. He would just say something along the lines of, "But you're just so pretty." Not flattering at all when it's a man who won't take no for an answer. Anyways, this guy asked me for a hug, and even though I refused him as politely as possible, he did it anyways. I froze up for a couple seconds before I moved away, which thankfully he let me do. He was being extremely creepy at this point, and tried feeling over my sides as he gave me a hug, which gave me even more alarm bells ringing in my head. I told him I had to leave, and as I was walking away, I heard, "I'll walk you home. Where do you live?" Unfortunately, I had nowhere else to go but home. Nobody else was around, and it was too early in the morning. My roommate was also back at his own house, as he went back home every weekend. I had a hold of my keys in my pocket, and just hoped once I got to the building, I could find a way in without this guy being able to invite himself in. I refused his walk home, but he followed me anyways, walking about 8 to 10 feet away from me as I was speeding up at this point, but caught up as I crossed the road. I don't know why I decided to go the long way to get to my building, which was an extra 2 minutes or so not that long. As I was approaching the flat, I felt a horrible sinking feeling in my chest. The door to the building closes really slow at first, before slamming shut, so I knew if I walked in, he could potentially follow me inside, and that puts me at an even greater risk. By this point, he was begging me to let him inside. He said he was extremely thirsty and wanted some water, but I told him that my roommate was sleeping, a subtle way to deter him by showing that I wasn't alone. But that didn't seem to faze him. He was trying to be touchy and just kept pleading with me to let him inside. But I kept my ground and said no as best as possible. As he was talking to me, I managed to use the fob on the door to open it, just enough to carefully slide through. However, he was right by the door and I didn't want to make him upset, so I apologized and told him no once again. Luckily, he had moved away from the door as someone wanted to get into the building. The guy asked if everything was okay when he saw me, but I stupidly said everything was fine. That did give me a chance to move away from the door and let it close once the guy walked through. I didn't even look back to the guy as I ran upstairs to my flat as fast as I could. I didn't get any sleep that night, and from that moment on, I made sure I always had money aside for a taxi. I think I walked home once more between June and October before I moved. Really scary stuff, and I'm glad I never saw him again after that. This all happened probably about a month ago, from Thursday to Monday. Night 1, Thursday. I just gotten off of work and walked a bit to get to my car. It was 10:30 p.m., as I usually got off work pretty late at night. As I was unlocking it, a Jeep turned the corner, saw me, and slammed on the brakes on the opposite side of the street. He started yelling something at me, and I was pretty scared, so I didn't say anything back, and I got into my car right after that. I was watching the Jeep in my rearview mirror, and he flipped a U-turn and sat behind my car for a few minutes. I didn't move my car, as I was scared he was going to follow me home. After a few minutes, he had driven away. I drove around taking random turns because I was freaked out. I texted my coworker, and she had seen the Jeep as well. I got into work the next morning. He was in the parking spot I was in, so we all laughed about how paranoid I was. Night 2, Friday. My coworker and I had just gotten off work again, and it was possibly around 11 p.m. She decided to drive me to my car because parking on the street where my work is located sucks, so I had to park 3 streets away. We had just crossed the street and gotten into her car, and the same Jeep whips around the corner. I told her, look who it is," and we had a laugh about it. Once I was in my car, I was driving down the street her truck was just parked on. The Jeep once again whipped around the same corner where us 2 girls were. I thought it was slightly strange, but chalked it up to being paranoid again, and I didn't think anything of it. Night 3, Monday. It was around 10:30 p.m., and us girls were still at work waiting for a few more clients to pick up their pets. I was just giving a woman her dog when the same Jeep parks in my work's parking lot. He had told me that he had been driving around the area for the past 45 minutes trying to find a parking spot. Again, the parking on the street my work is located at is atrocious, but nothing so bad that you would spend 45 minutes driving around looking for a spot. It takes about 10 at the most. I know, I've timed it. I had said, "Okay, you can just sit here, but my car's right there. I can move it and you can take my spot, no big deal." He looked at me dead in the eyes and said, "No, I want to sit here." I got a pretty bad feeling and went back inside and let the girls know that the guy was in our parking lot. They all thought it was pretty weird and creepy, especially because I had offered him the spot. He just turned his car completely off. He didn't have his phone on that we could see or any other light source. 11:30 rolls by and we see his car turn back on. He had just been sitting there for about an hour at that time of night. We found it pretty weird. After he finally left, we made sure we saw his Jeep turn the corner and booked it to our cars. This may just be me being overdramatic, but I believe he had bad intentions for one of us girls. I've only seen that Jeep twice since these incidents, and I'm constantly looking for it. This story happened to me about 3 years back, when I used to work at a gas station very close to where I live. The event really creeped me out, so I can vividly picture everything that happened that day at work. I had went in for my shift about 6 p.m. that day. Our gas station was open 24/7, so some days I would end up working till about 1 in the morning. The first half of my shift was nothing out of the ordinary. They put me on the floor shift instead of working in the kitchen, so I was mostly just cleaning up the store. Every now and then, we would get a lot of customers at a time, so I would have to cash them out and handle the register, but that was just a normal thing. After some time, I had stocked the cooler, cleaned up some dishes, and finished up some tasks, so overall, it was a very easy day. I can remember at the time of her first arriving, I was finishing up cleaning the kitchen. We normally close the kitchen around 10:30 every night, but the person on the kitchen shift ended up doing a horrible job of cleaning up. My manager put me back there just to tidy things up and clean the machines. I was just about to take off my gloves when I saw an elderly woman with a book bag on enter the store. I normally don't stop what I'm doing to look at customers who come in, but there was something just really off about her. She was walking with this very awkward limp, and her hood was up. That alone would raise concerns, but for the first 20 seconds that she was in the store, her head was facing directly towards the ground. She made a loop around the one part of the store, and then went up to the counter. She looked up at my manager, and in almost a whisper goes, "Can I use your telephone, please?" After this, I thought maybe she was just homeless and was calling someone for a ride, so I shrugged it off. I made myself a flatbread sandwich before closing up, so I went behind the counter to eat it before I got back to work. Every now and again, I caught myself looking up at her on the phone, and I realized she had her back turned to both of us and was speaking quietly. The creepiest part was that she kept looking back at me. She would talk on the phone inaudibly, then whip her head back, stare at me for like 3 seconds, then turn around and go back to talking. This made me super uncomfortable. After she got finished using the phone, she went behind the counter of the store and just sat down. This is the first time I've ever seen someone just sit down in our store. At this point, I had finished my sandwich and went back to grab the floor scrubber because it had been a while since I cleaned up the floor. When I came out, I was directly across from her, and I could just see her staring at me. She wouldn't take her gaze off me. Everywhere I went throughout the store, I just felt her eyes peeled on the back of my head. I stopped the scrubber for a moment and decided I should stock some drinking cups because one of the slots was completely empty. I looked back at her and she was still looking at me, but this time she got up and went back to the counter again. She looked up yet again at my manager and asked if she could use the phone. The eerie part was that she kept doing the same thing, where she would talk on the phone, look back at me, turn around and continue talking. She didn't even grab her stuff or anything. She just had her hood on and kept awkwardly staring. I obviously had to continue working my job, but I got really worried about who she was talking to on the phone and why she wouldn't stop looking at me while she was talking to them. I got back on the scrubber and she went back into the corner of the store to sit down. I was making my way up the aisle towards her when I got a really good look at what she looked like. Her stare gave me the chills. She had really big eyes and they looked very dark. They might have been very dark brown, but to me they appeared almost black. She still had her hood up and she was just sitting there staring at me. Now, it's normal for a person to look at someone when they're coming up to you, but I was literally 10 feet away and she was staring directly at me for 5 seconds. If you've ever seen the movie Drag Me to Hell, she looked like the old woman from that movie. I quickly looked down at the floor but continued scrubbing past her. After what seemed like forever, I finished a small bit of floor in the area and made my way to the back of the store. I was halfway there when I heard a rustling of the book bag and realized that she grabbed her stuff and walked out. She did it so quickly it startled me. As she walked out, I looked at the window and realized that there was no car there to pick her up. Whoever she was talking to on the phone obviously was not a ride. She was just walking all by herself on the road. I recently got a job at a hotel downtown from where I live. I had never worked in the hotel industry before, so I had no idea what to expect. The time between applying for the job and being hired was less than 24 hours, which made me nervous. But I had been looking for several months and couldn't find anything, so I thought, I'll take the chance. The hotel is about 150 years old and has plenty of character. Behind the front desk are places where the wallpaper has torn away, revealing the psychedelic wallpaper from what I could only guess to be the 1970s. We're talking bright pink, neon green, hookah-induced vision-type wallpaper. The walls in the upper floors are painted bright yellow and orange, and the hallways are narrow and even give off that shining kind of feel to it. But I'll elaborate on that later. My manager was a young Chinese man in his mid-20s, only 5 years older than me. The man who owns the building is also Chinese, and literally a walking stereotype. The owner is friendly and kind to his employees, but he's also rich enough that he doesn't really care if the hotel is up to par. I learned recently that he also owns one of the more run-down shopping centers downtown, so this might explain the less than 5-star quality of the hotel. Probably about 3.5 stars, in my opinion. Some people describe it as quaint, unique, full of character, while others describe it as outdated or disappointing. As a history enthusiast, I would agree that this place is full of character, but I think the owner should be a little more concerned about keeping the place clean. There are lots of problems in this hotel, including mice, broken toilets, falling ceiling tiles, leaks, and other maintenance nightmares. The fancier rooms on the top floors have real fireplaces in them, so that also adds risk of fires at the hands of careless guests. Mice are a common problem, and thankfully the guests don't have to see any of the dusty traps filled with dead rodents in the basement. But by far, the most interesting aspect of the hotel is that it's supposed to be haunted. There are 2 ghosts that have been reported in the building, as well as the adjoining pub next door. Back when the hotel was first built, it had a reputation of being a complete dive. A lady, now named Lady Churchill, died in the hotel, and her spirit lingers in the haunted room 49. Guests will occasionally smell her perfume or see her face in the mirror. One of the most frightening stories includes someone opening the door only to have Lady Churchill fly at them in fury. On my first day, when my boss toured me around the hotel, he pointed out the haunted room to me. Lady Churchill had also been spotted at the fireplace in the pub, arguing with her boyfriend, the other resident ghost, Brady. Brady was stabbed to death in the basement stairwell. The stairwell is not in use anymore and leads directly from the street into the basement. Instead, it's used to store extra chairs and miscellaneous items. The light is never turned on, which adds more of a creepy factor. My shift is a day shift from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Every morning when I come in, I have to check the entire hotel by myself in search of homeless people sleeping in the back stairwell or trying to get through the basement. I'm not an intimidating person. I'm a short female, not physically fit, and too friendly for my own good. If I did find someone hiding in the hotel, what was I supposed to do about it? I'm not sure what creeps me out more, the fact that I'm going to look around for people that shouldn't be there, or the idea that I have to walk around in the dark, silent areas, known to be haunted, all by myself. My sweep of the hotel includes all 4 floors and guest rooms, the kitchen, the back stairwell, and the basement stairwell, as well as the basement. To give you some context, the back stairwell serves as a fire escape connecting all the floors together. It goes straight down to the street level. It's always cold and echoey in there, and as I said before, full of dead mice. When I was first told about the haunted stairwell, I mistakenly thought that they meant the fire escape stairs, as they go down to the basement level. The 4 floors for the guest rooms, in all their overlook hotel glory, are shaped like a square horseshoe, which means more enough blind corners. Lady Churchill haunted the room at the end of the hall around one of these blind corners, and yes, I do think about it every time I search the hotel. There's an elevator and an interior stairway, the one guests are supposed to use. Behind the elevator is an old connecting hallway that basically serves no purpose anymore. In the past, it may have been useful, but now it just serves as a secret passageway that goes behind the elevator and comes out the other end of the horseshoe. This hallway especially needs to be searched for homeless people, drunks, or people having sex. The basement is by far the creepiest part of the hotel. To get there, you either take the elevator or go through the pub and down the stairs. I prefer to go through the pub because there are some fantastic black and white photos of when the hotel was first built, and I love to look at them. It was almost the best place to see the age of the brick foundation. Anyway, the basement is used for storing beer kegs, firewood, plant potters, housekeeping items, and maintenance tools, among other things. It was usually deserted. Now that I know the dark, unused basement stairway is not where Brady's spirit is supposed to be, I think I try to spend even less time down there. This week is my second week of work, and my boss had put me on the afternoon-evening shift, just so I can get a sense of what it's like in case I have to cover someone in the future. Yesterday was my first late shift, and in that time I learned a whole bunch of things that I didn't know from the lady I worked with. This woman, let's call her Peggy, has been at the hotel for 14 years. She has seen all there is to see, and is well known for her stories. I've listened to some of the stories, and honestly, part of me thinks she's full of shit, but the other part is going to cautiously believe her on the off chance that it's true. Here are some things I learned about the hotel in the span of one shift. The man I'm replacing was not actually fired for chronic lateness, as my boss had told me, but instead for sexual harassment. The head of housekeeping, a man I get along very well with, is a friend of his. 2. The day before, Peggy caught a drug addict rooting around in the private back office after hours. We looked over the security footage and he was definitely searching for something. We now keep the office doors locked. 3. There were 2 guests several years back who stayed at the hotel, and the next day they robbed a jewelry store downtown and fled back to the hotel with everything they had stolen. There was a massive police standoff on the roof, SWAT teams and all. There's a news article about it online, otherwise I would have not believed it. 4. The bedrock of the hotel can be found in the boiler room. There is a slight gap that has been filled in on the top right corner that connects directly to the street. One time Peggy came down there to the boiler room to find a man halfway through the gap head first, trying to get in because he wanted to know what was down there. That image terrifies me. In that span of one night shift, an alarm bell went off in the basement. The police showed up at the pub, and a guest verbally abused the day staff over a non-existent shuttle to the hospital. No, not an ambulance, a shuttle. Taking the bus was beneath them, I suppose. And at my bus stop after my shift, a man was shooting up in public. My city has a drug epidemic going on right now. My bus took about a half hour to arrive, and when I got off at my stop, it was as foggy as Silent Hill. I thought as if I should be looking around for Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. It is October after all. That's one night shift down. I have another one tonight, and one more the day after. If anything interesting happens, I'll keep you folks updated. I mostly wanted to get this off my chest.